On a cold and rainy afternoon in Seattle, the city where his billion-dollar empire was born, Jeff Bezos found himself reminiscing about his past. Instead of heading to a high-tech boardroom or a private jet, he took a surprising detour. His feet led him to an old, independent bookstore tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. As soon as he stepped inside, a wave of nostalgia hit him. The scent of old books, fresh ink, and warm coffee filled the air. Wooden bookshelves, slightly worn from decades of use, lined the small store, each one filled with titles that had once defined his youth. The lighting was warm and dim, giving the place an inviting yet melancholic charm. The bookstore was nearly empty except for an elderly man behind the counter, who was carefully stacking books, and a young woman restocking shelves, humming softly to herself. Neither of them looked up as Bezos walked in. It was refreshing. For the first time in years, he wasn't surrounded by people who recognized him instantly. Walking past the rows of books, his fingers gently traced over the spines, as if trying to absorb the essence of a world he had once been a part of. His mind drifted back to Amazon's early days, when he and his team used to personally pack books in his garage. Dreaming of building something bigger. Then, something caught his eye. Above the cash register, a handwritten sign read, "Final Week Closing Sale. Thank you for 40 years of support." A wave of sadness washed over him. He turned to the elderly bookstore owner, placing a book down on the counter. "Are you really closing?" Bezos asked, his voice carrying an unexpected softness. The old man let out a sigh, his eyes heavy with the burden of time. "Yeah, 40 years of business, and we just can't keep up anymore. People prefer buying books online these days." Jeff felt a sharp pang of irony in his chest. After all, he had built the very company that changed the way books were sold forever. Little did the bookstore owner know this wasn't just any customer standing in front of him. And what Jeff Bezos was about to do would change everything. Jeff Bezos stood there for a moment, absorbing the weight of the elderly bookstore owner's words. The irony was undeniable. He had built an empire on the idea of making books more accessible. Yet here he was, standing inside a dying bookstore that had been swallowed up by the very digital revolution he had created. The old man adjusted his glasses and looked at Jeff with a tired smile. "I started this place with my wife back in the 80s. She used to say, as long as people love stories, bookstores will survive." He chuckled bitterly. "Guess we didn't see this coming." Jeff hesitated, then finally asked, "Have you considered selling the store instead of shutting it down?" The owner shook his head. "Tried, no takers. Nobody wants to run a bookstore anymore. It's all about ebooks, online orders, and fast delivery. Now, I get it. The world changes, and we just couldn't keep up." Jeff glanced around the store. He saw the young woman still stocking books, occasionally glancing toward them, curious, but not wanting to interrupt. He could tell she cared about this place. Then, a thought struck him. What if this wasn't the end of the bookstore, but the beginning of something new? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black credit card. "How much would it take to save this place?" Jeff asked. The old man blinked. "Excuse me, I mean it," Jeff continued. "I want to buy the store, but not just to keep it running. I want to transform it." The bookstore owner stared at him, confused. "Who even are you?" Jeff smiled. "Let's just say I know a thing or two about books." At that moment, the young woman at the shelves gasped. She had recognized him. Jeff Bezos, the man who had built Amazon, the man who had revolutionized bookselling forever. And now, he wanted to save a bookstore. The air in the shop grew thick with anticipation. The elderly owner, still trying to process the situation, crossed his arms. "You can't be serious." Jeff chuckled. I don't joke about business. For the first time in years, the bookstore had hope again. But what Bezos was planning wasn't just about saving a small shop, it was about rewriting history. The air inside the bookstore was electric with anticipation. Jeff Bezos stood there, his credit card still in his hand, waiting for the bookstore owner to respond. The elderly man adjusted his glasses and let out a deep breath. "You're serious?" the old man finally said, shaking his head in disbelief. Jeff nodded. "I am." The young woman, still clutching a book in her hands, couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "But why?" she blurted out. "Aren't bookstores kind of obsolete now?" Jeff turned to her with a knowing smile. "That's exactly why I want to do this." The old man narrowed his eyes. "I don't understand. You built Amazon, the thing that put stores like mine out of business. And now you want to buy a failing bookstore. What's the catch?" Jeff hesitated for a moment, then gestured toward the rows of books. "I started Amazon in my garage with nothing but a dream to sell books in a more efficient way. But somewhere along the way, I realized something. Convenience is great, but the magic of bookstores, the experience of discovering stories, holding a book in your hands, smelling the pages, that's something e-commerce can't replace." The bookstore owner looked at Jeff with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "So, what are you saying?" Jeff took a deep breath. "I don't want to just save this store. I want to reinvent it." The young woman's eyes widened. "Reinvent?" Jeff nodded. "This won't just be a bookstore, it'll be an experience. A hybrid between traditional bookshops and cutting-edge technology. Imagine a space where people can come to read, to connect, to engage with stories in new and interactive ways. We'll have digital previews, community book readings, and even AI-powered recommendations right inside the store. It'll be a next generation bookstore, one that thrives in the modern world instead of fighting against it." The old man raised an eyebrow. "And you think that'll work?" Jeff smiled. "I don't think I know." For the first time, the elderly owner seemed intrigued. "And what happens to me, to my employees?" Jeff's expression softened. "You stay, you run it. With my support. Your experience is invaluable. The heart of the store remains, you just get the tools to make it thrive again." The old man stared at Jeff for a long moment. The store had been his life's work, and he had prepared himself for its end. But now, this man, this billionaire who had changed the world, was standing in front of him, offering him a new beginning. After what felt like an eternity, the old man finally nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's do it." The young woman gasped, her hands covering her mouth in shock. A slow smile spread across Jeff's face. "Great. Let's make history." Asterisk news of Jeff Bezos buying a small, struggling bookstore spread like wildfire. Within hours, headlines began popping up across major news outlets. Amazon's Jeff Bezos makes a shocking move. Buys a failing bookstore. Jeff Bezos returns to his roots, a game changer for local bookstores. Billionaire turns small bookstore into the future of reading. Social media exploded with mixed reactions. Some people were skeptical. Is this just a PR stunt? Why would a billionaire care about a failing bookstore? Others were hopeful. If anyone can reinvent bookstores, it's Jeff Bezos. Maybe this is exactly what the industry needs. But what no one expected was what happened next. Asterisk in just a few weeks, the bookstore had undergone a remarkable transformation. Gone were the flickering fluorescent lights and dust-covered shelves. In their place were sleek, beautifully designed bookshelves stocked with a curated selection of bestsellers, rare finds, and independent authors. Jeff had personally brought in a team of experts to modernize the bookstore while keeping its soul intact. Asterisk A. Digital kiosk now allowed customers to instantly search for books and read short excerpts before buying. An interactive author's corner featured live readings and virtual Q&A sessions with famous writers. An AI-powered recommendation system suggested books based on customers' personal reading habits, and in the center of it all, the bookstore's original owner, who had once feared the end of his life's work, stood proudly behind the counter, watching as his store flourished in a way he had never imagined. ***. On opening day, a line wrapped around the block. Hundreds of book lovers, authors, and even skeptics gathered to see what all the buzz was about. Then, without any warning, the door swung open, and Jeff Bezos himself walked in. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Jeff smiled and made his way to the front counter, where the bookstore owner stood. The old man extended his hand, but Jeff shook his head. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a golden key. "This," Jeff announced, handing it to the owner, "is still your store. I was just here to make sure it had a future." The old man's hands trembled as he took the key. His voice cracked. You're giving it back?" Jeff nodded. "I never wanted to take it from you. Just wanted to make sure the next chapter of this store's story was one worth telling." The entire store erupted in applause. Tears welled in the old man's eyes as he looked around at the packed shelves, the excited customers. The future he never thought possible. It wasn't just a bookstore anymore. It was a symbol, a reminder that even in the age of technology, some things like the love of books, the magic of storytelling, and the power of community would never go out of style. As Jeff walked toward the exit, a reporter stopped him. "Mr. Bezos, why did you do all of this?" Jeff smiled. "Because every great story deserves a second chance." And with that, he disappeared into the bustling streets, leaving behind a legacy far greater than just a bookstore. Because in that moment, he didn't just save a business, he rewrote its ending. What do you think? Do bookstores still have a future? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible life stories.